The message arrived on a Tuesday morning. Every screen on Earth lit up at the same time. Phones, computers, televisions, even the old digital watches that people still wore. Everything that could display text showed the same words in every language humans had ever spoken. Danny Price was drinking coffee in his small apartment in Chicago when his phone buzzed. He picked it up, expecting a text from his sister. Instead, he saw words that made his blood turn cold. To the people of Earth. You have been chosen for removal. Your species poses a threat to the stability of the galaxy. You have 30 days to prepare. There will be no negotiation. There will be no escape. This is not punishment, this is prevention. Danny stared at the words. His first thought was that it had to be a joke, some kind of global hack. But the message stayed on his screen even when he tried to close it. He turned on his television and saw news anchors reading the same message, their faces pale with fear. The message had come from something calling itself the Galactic Preservation Council. Danny had never heard of them before. Nobody on Earth had. But over the next few hours, scientists and world leaders appeared on television to explain what they had learned from the message data. The council was real. They controlled 47 different alien civilizations spread across thousands of light years. They had been watching Earth for a long time. They had studied human history, human behavior, human psychology, and they had made a decision. Humans were too dangerous to be allowed to continue existing. Danny walked to his window and looked out at the city. Cars were stopped in the middle of the street. People stood on sidewalks holding their phones, reading the same message over and over. Some were crying. Some were shouting. A few were just standing there, frozen, unable to process what they had learned. The world did not end that day. But it changed. Everything changed. 300 miles away, in a government building in Washington, a woman named Claire Watson sat in a conference room with 20 other people. Claire worked for the Department of Defense as a communications specialist. She had spent her entire career thinking about how to talk to other countries, how to negotiate, how to find common ground. Now she had to figure out how to talk to aliens who had already decided humans should die. The man at the head of the table was General Paul Harris. He looked tired. Everyone in the room looked tired. They had been working non-stop since the message arrived 6 hours ago. We need options, the general said. His voice was rough. We need ways to fight back, ways to negotiate, ways to survive. I do not care how crazy the ideas sound. Put everything on the table. A young man named Kevin Torres raised his hand. He worked for NASA and specialized in analyzing alien signals. Sir, I have been looking at the data that came with the message. The council included a lot of information about themselves. I think they wanted us to understand exactly why they are doing this. Show us, the general said. Kevin pulled up a presentation on the large screen. According to the council, humans have something they call aggressive adaptability. It means we are really good at surviving in places where we should not be able to survive. When other species hit a problem they cannot solve, they usually give up or die. Humans find a way around it. We adapt. We change. We overcome. That sounds like a good thing, someone said. The council does not think so, Kevin continued. They have run computer models of what happens if humans gain access to advanced technology. In every single simulation, humans either take over the galaxy or destroy it within 10,000 years. They see us as a virus that needs to be stopped before it spreads. Claire felt sick. So they are killing us because of what we might do thousands of years from now. That is insane. The council does not see it that way, Kevin said quietly. They have been around for millions of years. They think in terms of long-term consequences. To them, 10,000 years is nothing, and they have done this before. The room went silent. Done this before? The general asked. Kevin nodded. According to the data, the council has eliminated 17 other species over the past million years. All of them were identified as potential threats before they could develop space travel. We are number 18. Claire stood up. Her hands were shaking. So what do we do? How do we convince them they are wrong about us? That is the problem, Kevin said. I do not think we can convince them they are wrong. Their models are probably accurate. Given enough time and resources, humans probably would try to dominate the galaxy. It is in our nature. Then what are you saying? The general demanded that we should just accept this. No, Kevin said, I am saying we need to change the question. Instead of trying to convince them we are not dangerous, we need to convince them that our danger can be useful to them. Claire sat back down slowly. She understood what Kevin was suggesting. It was risky. It was almost certainly going to fail. But it was the only idea that made any sense. The meeting continued for hours. They discussed weapons that might slow down the alien fleet. They talked about evacuation plans that everyone knew were pointless. They argued about whether to broadcast messages of surrender or defiance. But Claire kept coming back to Kevin's idea: make themselves useful, turn their greatest weakness into an asset. When the meeting finally ended, Claire caught up with Kevin in the hallway. Do you really think this could work? She asked. Kevin looked exhausted. I do not know, but think about it. The council has been in charge for millions of years. They are stable, they are safe, but they are also stagnant. When was the last time any of their civilizations invented something new or took a real risk? They have traded progress for security. And you think they might need us because we still take risks? Maybe. If we can find a problem they cannot solve, something that requires the exact kind of thinking they are afraid of. Claire spent the rest of the day digging through the data that had come with the alien message. There had to be something there, some hint of a weakness or a problem. The council had sent so much information, almost as if they wanted humans to understand them. Maybe buried in all that data was the key to survival. She worked through the night, drinking terrible coffee and staring at screens full of alien symbols that the computer slowly translated into English. Most of it was boring technical stuff about how the council operated, rules and procedures that had been in place for thousands of years. But then she found something strange. There were gaps in the data, sections that should have been there but were missing. At first Claire thought it was a transmission error, but the gaps were too precise. Someone had deliberately removed information before sending the message to Earth. She called Kevin. It was 3 in the morning, but he answered on the first ring. He had not been sleeping either. I found something weird, Claire said. The council deleted parts of the message before they sent it to us, specifically data about their outer territories, energy readings, patrol reports, stuff like that. Why would they hide that from us if they are planning to kill us anyway? Kevin was quiet for a moment. Unless they are hiding it from themselves too, or at least hiding how bad it is. Send me what you found. I want to look at the patterns of what is missing. They worked together for the next 12 hours, comparing the gaps in the data with what information was included. Slowly, a picture started to form. The council had a problem, a big one. Something was happening at the edge of their territory, and they did not want anyone to know about it. Claire managed to recover fragments of the deleted data by analyzing the compression patterns in the transmission. It was not much, just pieces of sensor readings and partial reports, but it was enough. 3 star systems at the edge of council space had gone dark. No communications, no signals, just silence, and there was something else. The council had been sending military fleets to the area for years. The deleted records showed battle damage on ships that returned, casualties, equipment losses, all carefully hidden from the official reports. They are fighting a war, Kevin said, and they are losing. Claire felt a surge of hope for the first time in days. This is it. This is what we offer them. We help them with whatever is attacking their territory, and in exchange they let us live. But we do not even know what is attacking them, Kevin pointed out. How can we promise to solve a problem when we do not know what the problem is? We do not need to know the details, Claire said. We just need to make them believe that human thinking, the aggressive adaptability they are so afraid of, is exactly what they need to win this war. They have been trying to solve this problem with the same old strategies for years. Maybe they need someone who thinks differently. They took their findings to General Harris that afternoon. He listened without interrupting, his face getting darker as they explained what they had discovered. So the council is lying to us, he said finally, pretending everything is fine while they are actually getting their asses kicked by something out there. Not lying exactly, Kevin said, more like omitting. They are trying to maintain an image of absolute authority. Admitting they have a problem they cannot solve would undermine everything they have built. The general leaned back in his chair. And you think we should offer to help them? The same people who are planning to wipe us out. It is the only leverage we have, Claire said. They are scared of what we might become. But right now, they need what we are: creative, unpredictable, willing to try things that have never been tried before. All the traits that make us dangerous also make us useful. The general was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. Write the message, make it good. This is probably our only shot. Claire spent the next 2 days crafting the message. It had to be perfect. Too aggressive and the council would see it as a threat. Too submissive and they would dismiss it as begging. She needed to find the exact right tone. Confident but not arrogant. Honest but not desperate. She started by acknowledging everything the council had said about humans. Yes, humans were dangerous. Yes, they had aggressive tendencies. Yes, given enough time, they would probably try to expand and dominate. She did not deny any of it. Instead, she reframed it. Those same traits, she wrote, were exactly what the council needed right now. She carefully described what she and Kevin had discovered about the attacks on the outer territories. She did not accuse the council of hiding the truth. Instead, she expressed sympathy for the difficult position they were in. Fighting a war while trying to maintain stability across 47 civilizations had to be incredibly stressful. Then she made the offer. Give humanity a chance to prove its worth. Let a team of humans study the threat. No promises, no guarantees. Just an opportunity to show that human thinking could provide solutions that the Council's traditional approaches had missed. In exchange, humanity would accept monitoring and restrictions. They would stay in their own solar system. They would allow Council observers to watch everything they did. They would prove over time that they could be trusted partners instead of future threats. Kevin read the final draft and nodded. This is good, really good, but there is one problem. What if they say yes? What if they actually bring us to their war zone and expect us to solve a problem that has been beating them for years? We will have no idea what we are doing. Claire smiled grimly. Then we will figure it out. That is what humans do, right? We adapt. The message was sent out the next morning, broadcast on the same frequencies the council had used. Then came the waiting. Days passed with no response. Earth continued to prepare for the end. Governments tried to maintain order. Some people rioted. Others prayed. A few tried to build ships to escape, even though everyone knew there was nowhere to run that the council could not reach. Danny Price watched it all from his apartment in Chicago. He had stopped going to work. Everyone had. What was the point of showing up to an office job when the world was ending in a few weeks? Instead, he spent his days reading news reports and watching videos that people posted online. Messages to loved ones, final thoughts, expressions of anger and fear and sadness. His sister called him every day. She lived in California with her husband and 2 kids. They talked about normal things, the weather, what they had for breakfast. Anything except the countdown to extinction. It was easier that way. On the 14th day after the first message, something changed. Danny was watching television when every channel switched to the same broadcast. It was a government spokesperson, a woman he did not recognize. Her face was pale, but she was smiling. We have received a response from the Galactic Preservation Council, she said. They are willing to negotiate. Danny felt his heart start beating faster. The woman continued talking, explaining that a team of humans would be sent to meet with the council. There were conditions, strict ones, but there was hope. For the first time in 2 weeks, there was actual hope. In Washington, Claire read the council's response over and over. They had accepted the basic premise. They acknowledged that human input might provide a fresh perspective on their problem, but they had demands. First, the team of humans would work under constant surveillance. Any sign of deception or betrayal would result in immediate termination of all negotiations and the destruction of Earth. Second, the humans would have limited access to council technology and information. Only what was absolutely necessary to understand the problem. Nothing more. Third, if the human team failed to provide a useful solution within 1 month, the original extermination order would proceed on schedule. Fourth, even if the team succeeded, it would only buy time for negotiations. The council made no promises about the final outcome. The conditions were harsh, but they were better than certain death. General Harris called a meeting to select the team. Claire assumed she would be part of it. She had written the message. She understood the situation better than almost anyone, but the general had other ideas. You are too valuable here, he told her. We need you coordinating communications between the team and Earth. Kevin Torres will lead the mission. He understands the technical aspects better than anyone. Claire wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. Kevin was brilliant and he stayed calm under pressure. If anyone could handle meeting aliens face to face, it was him. The rest of the team was selected over the next 48 hours. Dr. Amy Liu, a biologist who specialized in extreme environments. Lieutenant Ray Coleman, a military engineer with experience in improvised solutions. Dr. Frank Morris, a physicist who had written papers on theoretical approaches to problems that seemed impossible. And Captain Bate Warren, a pilot and tactician who had a reputation for thinking 3 steps ahead of everyone else. 5 people to save the human race. It seemed absurd, but it was all they had. The Council sent a ship to collect them. It appeared in orbit without warning, a vessel that looked like it was made from liquid metal that somehow held its shape. The team boarded with minimal ceremony. There were no speeches, no dramatic farewells, just 5 scared humans walking into an alien ship with no idea if they would ever come back. Danny watched the departure on television. The camera showed the ship disappearing in a flash of light that hurt to look at. Then it was gone. Earth felt emptier somehow, as if those 5 people had been carrying all the hope that remained. Inside the ship, Kevin and his team were led to a chamber that adjusted itself to human needs. The air became breathable. The gravity settled to Earth normal. Even the lighting shifted to match sunlight. Their council escort, a being that appeared as nothing more than a shimmer in the air, explained that the ship would reach their destination in 3 days. 3 days to prepare. 3 days to figure out how to solve a problem that had beaten an ancient alien civilization. Kevin tried not to think about the odds. Instead, he focused on what they knew. The council provided them with data during the journey. Information about the attacks, sensor readings, casualty reports. Everything they had tried to hide from Earth was now laid out in brutal detail. 3 star systems had been completely consumed, not just the planets, everything. Stars, asteroids, even the space dust. All of it had been broken down into its component atoms and reformed into something else. The attackers, if they could even be called that, did not communicate. They did not negotiate. They simply consumed. The Council had tried everything. Weapons that could destroy planets. Diseases designed to kill anything with DNA. Technology that bent the laws of physics. Nothing worked. The invaders adapted to every attack, sometimes in hours, sometimes in minutes. Amy studied the biological data, what little there was. These things are not alive, she said. Not in any way I understand. They are more like machines, but machines that can evolve. Ray looked at the tactical reports. The Council keeps trying to fight them directly, attack and destroy, but that is not working. Every time they destroy one of these things, the others learn from it. They need a completely different approach. Frank pulled up star charts of the affected area. He stared at them for hours, not saying anything. The others left him alone. They had learned that Frank did his best thinking in silence. Bate coordinated everything, making sure the team stayed focused and organized. She created schedules, assigned research tasks, and made sure everyone got at least a few hours of sleep. Someone had to keep them functioning, and she had volunteered for that role. Kevin coordinated with Claire back on Earth through quantum communication that the Council had provided. The lag was barely noticeable. He could almost pretend he was still in Washington instead of traveling faster than light toward an alien war zone. "How is Earth holding up?" he asked during one call. "Better than expected," Claire said. "People are scared, but they are not giving up. The announcement that you are working on a solution gave everyone something to hope for. No pressure or anything." Kevin tried to smile. "Great, just what I needed. The weight of 8 billion people on my shoulders. You can handle it," Claire said. "You are the smartest person I know. If anyone can figure this out, it is you." On the second day of travel, Frank finally spoke up. "I think I have something." Team gathered around his workstation. He had the star charts displayed with additional data overlaid. "Look at the pattern of the attacks. The invaders are not spreading randomly. They are following specific paths, always toward areas with high concentrations of matter. Stars, planets, debris fields. Makes sense," Ray said. "If they consume matter to replicate, they would go where the matter is." "Exactly," Frank said. which means they are following a logic, not intelligent logic necessarily, more like a program. Find matter, consume matter, replicate, repeat. So what if we redirect them? Kevin asked. Give them a target that is more appealing than the inhabited systems. Frank nodded. Look here. He pointed at a location on the star chart. 3 light years from the main invasion path. A neutron star. One of the densest objects in the universe. If we could make it appear even more attractive, even more dense with the kind of energy signatures these things respond to, they might change course. And then what? Amy asked. They reach the neutron star and consume it. No, Frank said. Neutron stars have gravitational fields strong enough to tear apart anything that gets too close. Even these invaders. They would be trapped, unable to escape or effectively replicate. They would exhaust themselves trying to process matter in an environment that is fundamentally hostile to any kind of structure. It is brilliant, Bates said quietly. We are not trying to destroy them or stop them. We are just giving them a better option and letting physics do the rest. Can we actually modify a neutron star's energy signature? Ray asked. That seems like it would require a massive amount of power. The Council has the technology, Frank said. They have been able to manipulate stellar objects for thousands of years. They just never thought to use it this way. They have been so focused on direct confrontation that indirect solutions never occurred to them. This is exactly what Claire was talking about, Kevin said. Using human thinking to find approaches the Council would not consider. They are too set in their ways. We are not. The team spent the rest of the journey refining the plan. They identified the specific energy signatures that the invaders responded to most strongly. They calculated the modifications needed to make the neutron star irresistible. They developed backup plans for what to do if the invaders did not take the bait. By the time the ship arrived at the Council outpost, they had a complete proposal ready to present. Kevin felt nervous as they were escorted to the Council chamber. This was it. Either the Council accepted their plan and gave them a chance to prove themselves, or they rejected it and Earth died. The Council chamber was enormous. Beings from dozens of different species filled the space. Some looked almost human. Others were so alien that Kevin could not even figure out which parts of them were heads and which were bodies. But they all turned to look at the human team with the same expression, skepticism. A voice echoed through the chamber, seeming to come from everywhere at once. You have had 3 days to study our problem. What solution do you propose? Kevin stepped forward. His voice shook slightly, but he pushed through it. We propose a redirection strategy. Instead of trying to destroy the invaders, we give them a target that is more attractive than your inhabited systems. A neutron star that we modify to emit the energy signatures they are drawn to. Once they are trapped by the gravitational field, they will be neutralized without requiring any direct combat. The chamber was silent. Then beings started talking. Some voices were skeptical. Others sounded interested. A few were openly dismissive. Kevin waited, trying not to show how terrified he was. Finally, the voice spoke again. Your approach is unconventional. We have not considered manipulation of the invaders' behavior through environmental modification. It shows creative thinking. The Council will evaluate your proposal. You will have your answer within 6 hours. 6 hours of waiting. Kevin and his team were taken to quarters where they could rest, but none of them could sleep. They sat together in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. 8 billion lives depending on whether alien beings they had never met would trust a plan created by 5 humans who had no idea what they were doing. Back on Earth, Claire waited too. The news had spread that the team had presented a plan to the Council. People gathered in the streets, in churches, in homes, waiting, hoping, praying. Danny sat in his apartment with his sister on video call. Neither of them said anything. There was nothing left to say. Everything depended on what happened next. The 6 hours passed like days. Kevin tried to review their calculations one more time, but his mind would not focus. He kept thinking about all the things that could go wrong. What if the neutron star could not be modified the way they needed? What if the invaders did not respond to the energy signatures? What if the Council decided the plan was too risky and rejected it outright? Amy sat by the window, looking out at the alien stars. She had always dreamed of seeing space like this. As a kid, she had stared up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. Now she knew, and it was terrifying. The universe was so much bigger than she had imagined, so much older, so much more dangerous. Ray was doing push-ups in the corner. Physical activity helped him think. Up and down, up and down. He counted each one, focusing on the simple, repetitive motion. It kept his mind from spiraling into panic. Bates sat at the table, running through simulations on a tablet the council had provided. Even now, she was preparing for what came next. Success or failure, they needed to be ready. Frank had his eyes closed, but he was not sleeping. He was visualizing the neutron star, imagining the modifications they had proposed. In his mind, he traced the flow of energy, the manipulation of magnetic fields, the cascade of effects that would make the star irresistible to the invaders. It had to work. The math was sound, the physics checked out, but there was always a gap between theory and reality. When the call finally came, Kevin felt his stomach drop. The shimmer that served as their escort appeared in the doorway. The council has reached a decision. You will present your plan in detail to the engineering teams. If they confirm it is feasible, implementation will begin immediately. Relief flooded through Kevin. They had not been rejected outright. There was still a chance. The team followed the escort to a different section of the outpost. This room was smaller, more focused. A dozen alien engineers waited inside, each representing a different council species. They looked at the humans with expressions that Kevin could not quite read. Curiosity, skepticism, maybe both. Frank took the lead on the technical presentation. He explained the modifications needed to the neutron star's magnetic field. He showed calculations for the energy output required. He demonstrated how the invaders would respond based on their observed behavior patterns. The alien engineers listened in silence, occasionally conferring with each other in languages that the translation system could not quite handle. One of the engineers, a being that looked like it was made of crystalline structures, spoke up. Your calculations assume the invaders will maintain their current behavior patterns, but they have demonstrated the ability to adapt. What if they recognize the trap? Amy answered before Frank could respond. The invaders adapt to threats, to attacks, to things trying to destroy them, but this is not an attack. We are offering them exactly what they want: more matter, more energy. By the time they realize the environment is hostile, they will already be caught in the gravitational field. Even if they adapt, they cannot adapt fast enough to escape a neutron star. Another engineer spoke. This one looked vaguely reptilian. Your plan requires precise timing. The modifications to the neutron star must be completed before the invaders shift their primary focus. We estimate a window of 7 days. Can you work within that time frame? Ray nodded. Give us the tools and the support and we will make it happen. We understand the urgency. The engineers consulted among themselves for what felt like hours. Kevin tried to stay calm. He focused on breathing slowly, in and out, in and out. Bates stood beside him, her presence steady and reassuring. They had done everything they could. Now it was up to the council to decide if they were worth the risk. Finally, the crystalline engineer spoke again. Your plan is unconventional, but the analysis confirms it could work. The council has authorized immediate implementation. You will work alongside our engineering teams. Failure is not an option, not for you, not for us, not for the systems that will be consumed if this does not succeed. Kevin felt dizzy with relief. We understand. We will not fail you. Work began immediately. The human team was divided among the council engineering groups. Frank worked with the stellar manipulation specialists, helping them calculate the exact modifications needed. Amy coordinated with the xenobiologists, even though calling the invaders biological was a stretch. Ray assisted the field engineers who would implement the changes on site. Bate worked with the tactical teams to coordinate evacuation procedures for nearby systems in case the plan failed. Kevin split his time between all the groups, making sure everyone stayed coordinated. He also maintained regular contact with Claire back on Earth. She deserved to know what was happening, and honestly, he needed the connection to home. Being surrounded by aliens, working on technology he barely understood, trying to save 2 civilizations at once. It was overwhelming. Talking to Claire helped ground him. The council's technology was incredible. They had ships that could manipulate stellar phenomena from a safe distance, devices that could amplify or dampen magnetic fields across light years, sensors that could detect changes in space-time itself. Working with it felt like being a caveman suddenly given access to a supercomputer. Kevin understood the principles, but the implementation was so far beyond human capability that it felt like magic. On the third day of work, Frank made a discovery. He was reviewing the sensor data from the invaders when he noticed something strange. The Council is tracking these things all wrong. They are treating each invader unit as independent, but look at this. He pulled up a visualization showing the invaders' movements. They are coordinated, not through communication that we can detect, but there is definitely a pattern. They are acting like a single organism with multiple bodies. Amy looked at the data and felt her pulse quicken. If they are connected somehow, then redirecting one might redirect all of them. We do not need to lure every single unit to the neutron star. We just need to create a strong enough signal that the collective decides it is worth pursuing. This changes everything, Kevin said. The modifications do not need to be as extensive as we thought. We just need to make the neutron star register as the highest value target in the area. The invaders will handle the rest themselves. They presented the revised plan to the Council engineers. The crystalline being studied their findings carefully. This is a significant improvement. Implementation time is reduced to 4 days, and the energy requirements are much lower. Your insight may have saved several systems worth of resources. Kevin felt a spark of pride. This was what humans brought to the table, not superior technology or ancient wisdom, just a different way of looking at problems. Fresh eyes that could spot patterns others had missed. On Earth, Claire watched the progress reports with growing hope. The news had been released to the public in carefully controlled updates. People knew the human team was working with the Council. They knew a solution was being implemented, but they did not know the details. The governments had decided that too much information would cause panic if something went wrong. Danny spent his days reading every scrap of information he could find. Online forums were full of speculation. Some people thought the whole thing was a hoax. Others were convinced the team would fail and Earth was doomed. But a growing number were starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, humanity had found a way to survive. His sister called him with excitement in her voice for the first time in weeks. Danny, people are going back to work. Schools are reopening. Everyone is acting like life might actually continue. Is it real? Do you think we are really going to make it? Danny looked out his window at the city. Traffic was moving again. He could see lights in apartment windows where there had been darkness for days. I do not know, but I think we have a chance. A real chance. On the 4th day, the modifications to the neutron star were complete. The human team gathered with the Council engineers to watch the activation. Massive amounts of energy were channeled into the star, manipulating its magnetic field in ways that should have been impossible. The star began emitting the energy signature that the invaders found irresistible. Now came the real test. Would the invaders take the bait? Sensors tracked the invaders as they continued their advance toward the 4th inhabited system. For 6 hours, nothing changed. They maintained their course, seemingly unaware of the modified neutron star just 3 light-years away. Kevin felt his anxiety building with every passing minute. What if they had miscalculated? What if the invaders did not respond the way they expected? Then, slowly, the pattern shifted. One invader unit diverted from the main swarm, then 3 more, then dozens. The collective had detected the neutron star and was responding exactly as predicted. Bait pulled up trajectory calculations. At current speed, the first invaders will reach the neutron star in 18 hours. The main swarm will follow over the next 2 days. The council chamber erupted in activity. Beings who had lived for thousands of years were reacting with what looked like genuine excitement. The crystalline engineer approached Kevin. Your species has proven its value. The council recognizes this. Negotiations for Earth's future will begin immediately. But the invaders are not neutralized yet, Kevin said. We need to make sure they actually reach the neutron star and cannot escape. Agreed. But the outcome is now highly probable. You have done what we could not do in 20 years. You have provided a solution. Kevin contacted Claire immediately. We did it. The invaders are changing course. Earth is going to survive. Claire felt tears running down her face. She had held it together for weeks, staying professional, staying focused. But now, hearing the relief in Kevin's voice, she let herself break down. They were not going to die. Humanity was not going to be erased from existence. They had a future. The announcement went out to Earth within the hour. Every screen showed the same message, but this time it brought hope instead of despair. The threat to Earth has been suspended. Human representatives have successfully assisted the Galactic Preservation Council in resolving a critical situation. Negotiations are ongoing. Further updates will follow. Danny watched people pour into the streets. They were laughing, crying, hugging strangers. Car horns blared. Fireworks exploded in the sky even though it was midday. The world had been given a second chance, and everyone knew it. Over the next 2 days, the human team watched as the invaders reached the neutron star. The gravitational forces were even more devastating than predicted. Invader units were torn apart the moment they got close enough, but their collective programming drove them forward anyway. More and more of them poured into the gravity well, unable to escape, unable to effectively process the hostile matter, slowly exhausting themselves in a futile attempt to consume something that was fundamentally beyond their capabilities. Amy monitored the biological data with fascination. They are still trying to adapt. Even now, even as they are being destroyed, they are attempting to find a way to survive. It is remarkable in a horrible way. Ray shook his head. Remarkable or not, they are stuck. That neutron star will hold them for years, maybe decades. By the time any of them escape, if they even can, they will be too weakened to pose a threat. The Council formally acknowledged the success of the operation. The immediate threat was contained. The fourth system was safe, and humanity had proven that their dangerous traits could be channeled toward constructive purposes. The negotiations that followed were difficult but fair. The Council agreed to suspend the extermination order indefinitely. In exchange, humanity accepted significant restrictions. A monitoring station would be established in the solar system. Humans would not be allowed to expand beyond their home system for at least 1,000 years. All human activities would be observed and recorded. Any signs of aggressive expansion or development of weapons that could threaten the Council would result in immediate sanctions, possibly including the original extermination order being reinstated. But in exchange, humanity would be consulted on problems that the Council could not solve through conventional means. Earth would become a source of creative solutions for situations that required unconventional thinking. It was not freedom, but it was survival with purpose. Before the team returned to Earth, the crystalline engineer met with them one final time. You have changed how the Council thinks about dangerous species. We have always seen threats that must be eliminated. You have shown us that threats can also be assets if properly directed. This is a new perspective for us, one that may change how we interact with other developing civilizations in the future. Kevin felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. So other species might survive because of what we did here, possibly. The Council does not change quickly, but you have planted a seed. Time will tell what grows from it. The journey back to Earth felt different from the journey out. The team was exhausted but alive. They had saved their species and possibly changed the fate of others who would come after. When the ship appeared in Earth orbit, they looked down at the blue planet with new appreciation. They had come so close to losing it all. The reception when they returned was overwhelming. Billions of people wanted to thank them. World leaders wanted to honor them, but the team just wanted to go home. They had done their job. Now they needed rest. Claire met them at the landing site. She hugged Kevin tightly, not caring that cameras were recording everything. "You did it. You actually did it. We all did it," Kevin said. "You figured out the Council had a weakness. Frank designed the solution. Everyone played their part." That night, Danny watched the news coverage from his apartment. The team was being interviewed, trying to explain what had happened in simple terms that everyone could understand. They looked tired but happy, alive. His sister called. "We made it, Danny." "We actually made it." "Yeah," Danny said, smiling for the first time in weeks. "We did." 8 months after the team returned to Earth, Claire Watson sat in a new office that had not existed before the crisis. The building was in Geneva, built specifically to house the Human Council Liaison Department. Her title was Director of Extraterrestrial Relations, which sounded impressive but mostly meant she spent her days reading reports and attending meetings with aliens who appeared as holograms. The monitoring station the Council had promised was now operational. It hung in orbit just beyond the Moon, a massive structure that dwarfed anything humans had ever built. Ships came and went regularly, bringing Council observers who watched everything humanity did. Every satellite launch was recorded. Every scientific experiment was logged. Every government decision was analyzed for signs of aggression or expansion. Most people had returned to their normal lives. The initial panic had faded. The celebrations had ended. Now Earth existed in a strange new reality where everyone knew they were being watched by aliens who had almost killed them all. Some people were fine with it. Others resented the constant surveillance. A few extremist groups had formed, demanding that humanity fight back against the restrictions, but most people just wanted to move forward. Claire was reading through the latest monitoring report when her assistant knocked on the door. "You have a visitor," one of the Council representatives. They did not schedule an appointment. That was unusual. Council representatives always scheduled everything weeks in advance. Claire straightened her desk and nodded. "Send them in." The being that entered her office was not one she recognized. It looked vaguely humanoid, but its skin shifted colors like oil on water. Its eyes, if they were eyes, were completely black. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere at once rather than from its mouth. "Director Watson, I am Coordinator Velm. I oversee threat assessment for the Council's inner territories. We have a situation that requires immediate human consultation." Claire felt her stomach tighten. Already? They had only been working with the Council for 8 months. "Please sit. Tell me what is happening." Velm did not sit. It paced back and forth, its colors shifting more rapidly. "We have a diplomatic crisis. One of our member civilizations, the Caldeth, has announced they are withdrawing from the Council. They claim we have become too conservative, too afraid of change. They want to pursue their own path of development without Council oversight." Claire frowned. "That sounds like an internal political issue. What does it have to do with humans? The Caldeth are using your success as justification. They point to how humans solved the invader problem where the Council failed. They argue that the Council's methods are outdated and that younger, more dynamic civilizations should be given more freedom to innovate. Your species has become a symbol of what they believe the Council is suppressing." Claire understood immediately why this was a problem. If the Caldeth left the Council, others might follow. The entire structure that had maintained galactic peace for millions of years could collapse, and it would be partly humanity's fault, even though they had nothing to do with the Caldeth's decision. "What do you need from us?" she asked. "The Council wants human representatives to speak with the Caldeth leadership, to explain that your success came from cooperation, not independence, to demonstrate that working within Council structures is more effective than abandoning them. You want us to convince them to stay," Claire said slowly, "even though we are restricted to our own solar system and constantly monitored. You want us to tell them that being controlled by the Council is actually a good thing." Velm's colors darkened. "I understand the irony, but the alternative is chaos. If the Council fragments, the stability of the galaxy is at risk. Wars could erupt. The careful balance we have maintained for millions of years could collapse in decades." Claire sat back in her chair. This was exactly the kind of situation the agreement was designed for. The Council needed human help with a problem they could not solve themselves, but it put humanity in an impossible position. If they helped the Council maintain control, they would be working against their own interests. If they refused, the Council might decide Earth was not worth keeping around after all. "I need to consult with my team," she said, "and with government leaders. This is not a decision I can make alone. You have 48 hours. The Caldeth are holding a final summit to vote on withdrawal. If they leave, it happens immediately." Velm turned toward the door. "Humanity helped save the Council once. We are asking you to do it again." After Velm left, Claire immediately called Kevin. He was teaching at a university now, trying to return to a normal life. but she knew he would want to know about this. When his face appeared on her screen, she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. Teaching was harder than negotiating with aliens, apparently. "We have a problem," she said, and explained the situation. Kevin was quiet for a long moment. "So we are being asked to be the Council's propaganda tool. To convince other species that giving up freedom for security is a good trade. That is one way to look at it. Is there another way?" Claire rubbed her temples. "Maybe we frame it differently. We do not tell the Caldeth to stay because the Council demands it. We tell them that working within established systems, even imperfect ones, is more effective than striking out alone. That cooperation achieves more than isolation. But do we actually believe that?" Kevin asked. "Or are we just saying what the Council wants to hear?" That was the real question. Claire thought about the past 8 months. The restrictions had been frustrating. Knowing that everything humanity did was being watched and judged felt oppressive. But they were alive. They had access to Council knowledge and technology, even if it was limited. They were learning things that would have taken centuries to discover on their own. "I think we have to be honest," she said finally. "We tell them the truth, that the restrictions are hard. That being monitored is uncomfortable. But that the alternative, being alone in a galaxy full of threats, is worse. We survived because we found a way to work with the Council. Maybe that is the message the Caldeth need to hear." Kevin nodded slowly. "Okay, I can work with that. Who else are you bringing on the team?" Claire had already been thinking about that. Amy Liu was doing research on extremophile organisms now, work that was actually being funded by the Council. Ray Coleman had joined the Space Force and was helping design defense systems that worked within Council guidelines. Frank Morris was advising on stellar engineering projects. Bate Warren was training the next generation of tactical analysts. Everyone from the original mission had moved on with their lives. Pulling them back into Council business felt unfair. But they were also the only humans who really understood what working with aliens was like. "I will contact the others," Claire said. "See who is willing to come. But Kevin, this is voluntary. If you want to say no, I will understand." Kevin smiled tiredly. "When has that ever stopped me? Send me the details. I will be there." 24 hours later, the team was assembled in Geneva. Amy had agreed immediately, curious to meet another alien species. Ray had taken more convincing, but eventually his sense of duty won out. Frank had simply said yes without asking questions, as if he had been expecting the call. Bate had been the hardest to reach, but when Claire finally got through to her, she agreed on the condition that this would not become a regular thing. The Council provided transport to the Caldeth home system. The journey took 2 days, during which the team studied everything they could find about Caldeth culture and history. The Caldeth were one of the older Council members, having joined over 200,000 years ago. They were innovators once, responsible for several major technological breakthroughs that the Council still used. But over time, they had been pressured to slow down, to be more cautious, to avoid taking risks that might destabilize the carefully maintained balance. Now, apparently, they were tired of being held back. The Caldeth homeworld was beautiful. Twin suns cast golden light across cities that looked like they were grown rather than built. Organic architecture curved in impossible shapes. Gardens filled every open space. The Caldeth themselves were tall and elegant, with skin that looked like polished wood and eyes that glowed with soft blue light. The human team was brought to a central gathering place where Caldeth leaders waited. The atmosphere was tense. These beings had already made up their minds about leaving. They were only taking this meeting as a courtesy to the Council. One of the Caldeth stepped forward. She introduced herself as Architect Vessa, leader of the departure movement. "We agreed to meet with you out of respect for what your species accomplished. You proved that fresh thinking can solve problems the Council could not, but we do not understand why you would advocate for staying under Council control." Kevin took a deep breath. "We are not here to advocate for anything. We are here to share our experience. 8 months ago, the Council was planning to exterminate humanity because we were too dangerous. We survived by finding a way to be useful while accepting restrictions. It is not perfect, but it is better than the alternative. The Caldeth are not facing extermination," Vessa said. "We are simply choosing independence. We want the freedom to innovate again, to take risks, to push boundaries like we did before we joined the council. Amy spoke up. Can I ask what you plan to do with that freedom? What innovations are you pursuing that the council is blocking? Vesa gestured and a holographic display appeared, showing complex equations and engineering diagrams. We have developed a new form of faster-than-light travel, one that is 10 times more efficient than current council technology, but the council has forbidden us from implementing it. Frank leaned forward, studying the diagrams. Why did they forbid it? They claim it is too dangerous, that it creates instabilities in subspace that could have unforeseen consequences, but we have run simulations. The risks are minimal. Frank spent several minutes examining the data. Then he looked up, his expression serious. The council is right. This technology would work, but it would create cascading effects in subspace. Over time, maybe decades or centuries, it would destabilize the entire faster-than-light network that the galaxy depends on. Every species would lose the ability to travel between stars. The Kaldith leaders exchanged glances. Our scientists disagree with that assessment. With respect, Frank said carefully, your scientists might be too close to the project. They want it to work so badly that they are missing the problems. I have no stake in this. I'm just looking at the physics. Ray joined in. I have seen this before. Brilliant people get so focused on what they can do that they stop asking if they should do it. The council might be overcautious about a lot of things, but in this case, they might actually be protecting you from yourselves. Vesa's glow dimmed slightly. You are saying we are wrong, that the council is justified in holding us back. No, Kevin said. We are saying that maybe this specific project is not the hill to die on. If you leave the council over this, you lose access to everything the council provides. Resources, protection, knowledge, and for what? A technology that might destroy the very thing you need it for. Bate had been quiet during the entire exchange. Now she spoke, her voice calm and measured. Can I ask a different question? What is this really about? Because from where I am sitting, this is not about faster-than-light travel. This is about respect. You feel like the council does not value your contributions anymore. You feel like you are being treated like children instead of partners. The Kaldith leaders were silent. Vesa's glow flickered. You are not wrong. Then maybe leaving is not the answer, Bate continued. Maybe the answer is to demand better treatment from within the council. To fight for a seat at the decision-making table instead of walking away from it. We have tried that for thousands of years, another Kaldith leader said. Nothing changes. The council is too set in its ways. Until 8 months ago, Claire said. Until a species barely capable of interstellar travel showed them a solution they had not considered. The council can change. It is slow, but it can happen. And you have a better chance of forcing that change from inside than from outside. The meeting continued for hours. The Kaldith presented other grievances. Restrictions on expansion. Limitations on research, mandatory protocols that seemed outdated. The human team listened to all of it and tried to offer honest perspectives. Sometimes they agreed with the Kaldith that the council was being too restrictive. Other times they pointed out flaws in the Kaldith's reasoning. What surprised Claire was how similar the Kaldith's complaints were to humanity's frustrations. Different species, different technologies, different cultures, but the same basic tension. The desire for freedom versus the need for structure. Innovation versus stability. Risk versus safety. As the sun set, Vesa called for a recess. The human team was given quarters to rest while the Kaldith leadership discussed what they had heard. Kevin collapsed on a couch in their shared room. That was exhausting. I feel like we are trying to solve a problem that has no good answer. Most important problems do not have good answers, Frank said, just less bad ones. Do you think we made any difference? Amy asked. Bate shrugged. Hard to say. We gave them things to think about. Whether that changes their minds is up to them. Claire stood by the window looking out at the alien city. The lights were different from Earth lights, softer, more organic. She wondered what it would be like to live here, among beings who had been building civilizations for hundreds of thousands of years while humans were still learning to make stone tools. We are so young, she said quietly. Compared to them, compared to the council, we barely exist. How did we end up in the middle of this? Because we are young, Ray said. We still remember what it is like to take risks, to try new things, to fail and try again. The council forgot that a long time ago. The next morning, Vesa came to their quarters personally. Her glow was steadier than before. The leadership has decided to delay the withdrawal vote. We need more time to consider what you have said. That is good, Kevin said cautiously. How much time? 6 months. During that time, we will work with the council to address our concerns through official channels. If meaningful progress is made, we will remain. If not, we will revisit the question of withdrawal. It was not a perfect outcome, but it was better than an immediate split. Claire felt relief wash over her. 6 months bought time for cooler heads to prevail. Vesa looked at the human team with something that might have been respect. You did not tell us what we wanted to hear. You told us what we needed to hear. That is rare. Most species that seek council favor simply agree with everything the council says. You were honest about the flaws while still advocating for cooperation. That balance is valuable. We do not know any other way to be, Amy said. Honesty is kind of our default setting. Vesa's glow brightened. Perhaps that is why the council fears you so much, and why they need you just as badly. The journey back to Earth felt different from the journey out. The team had accomplished something significant, even if it was not as dramatic as stopping the invaders. They had prevented a crisis through conversation instead of action, diplomacy instead of innovation. But when they arrived home, they discovered that not everyone was happy with what they had done. Protests had erupted around the world. People were angry that humans had helped the council maintain control over other species. They saw it as a betrayal. Working with the same organization that had almost destroyed Earth, helping them suppress other civilizations that just wanted freedom. Danny Price watched the protests on television with growing unease. He understood why people were upset. 8 months ago, they had all been about to die because the council decided humans were too dangerous. Now humans were helping the council keep other species in line. It felt wrong. But Danny also remembered those terrible weeks of waiting for the end. The fear. The desperation. The certainty that nothing could save them. The team had found a way to survive. Maybe working with the council was not ideal, but it was better than being dead. His sister called him that evening. She was at one of the protests. Danny, you need to see this. People are really angry. They think we sold out. Maybe we did, Danny said, but what choice do we have? That is what everyone is arguing about. Some people say we should have refused to help the council. Let the Caldeth leave. Show the council that we are not their tools. Others say we did the right thing by preventing a crisis. It is tearing communities apart. Claire watched the same protests from her office in Geneva. She had expected some backlash, but not this much. The team had tried to do the right thing. They had been honest with the Caldeth. They had not simply parroted council propaganda, but the nuance was lost in the headlines and the angry speeches. Kevin came to see her the next day. His university office had been vandalized. Someone had spray-painted traitor on his door. He looked shaken. This is getting out of hand, he said. People do not understand what we are dealing with. They think we can just refuse to work with the council and everything will be fine. But if we do that, the council could decide we are more trouble than we are worth. Claire poured them both coffee. Maybe we need to explain it better. Go public. Talk about what really happened with the Caldeth. And say what? That we helped prevent other aliens from gaining freedom because it served our interests to keep the council stable. That is exactly what people are angry about. No, Claire said slowly. We tell them the truth, that the Caldeth were about to implement technology that would have damaged the entire galactic infrastructure, that we did not convince them to stay out of loyalty to the council. We convinced them because leaving would have hurt them more than staying. They organized a press conference for the following week. All 5 members of the team sat at a table facing dozens of cameras and hundreds of journalists. Claire spoke first, explaining what had happened on the Caldeth homeworld. She showed the technical data that Frank had analyzed. She talked about the conversations they had about respect and autonomy and the difficulties of working within restrictive systems. Then she opened the floor to questions. The first journalist asked the obvious question. Are you not just doing the council's bidding, helping them maintain control over species that want freedom? Bate answered. If the Caldeth had left and implemented their flawed technology, every civilization in the galaxy would have lost the ability to travel between stars, including us. We did not help the council. We helped prevent a catastrophe that would have affected everyone. Another journalist pressed harder, but you are legitimizing the council's authority, making it easier for them to suppress other species in the future. Ray leaned forward. The council has authority whether we legitimize it or not. They have technology we can barely understand. They have been managing galactic affairs for millions of years. We can either work within that reality or pretend it does not exist. We chose to work within it. What about our own freedom? Someone shouted from the back. How can we advocate for working with the council when they are monitoring our every move? Kevin took that one. We do not like the restrictions any more than you do, but 8 months ago we were facing extinction. Now we are alive, we have access to knowledge and resources we never could have developed on our own, and we have a seat at the table when important decisions are being made. It is not perfect, but it beats the alternative. The questions continued for over an hour. Some were hostile, others were thoughtful. A few journalists actually seemed to understand the complexity of the situation. When it finally ended, Claire felt exhausted but hopeful. They had at least started a conversation. People might not agree with what the team had done, but at least they understood the reasoning behind it. Over the next few weeks, public opinion started to shift. The protests did not stop completely, but they became smaller. More people accepted that working with the council was a necessary compromise. Others remained angry but channeled that anger into productive advocacy for better terms in the Human Council Agreement. 3 months later, Coordinator Velm contacted Claire again. The Caldeth have reached an agreement with the Council. They will remain members but with expanded research autonomy and greater representation in Council decision-making. The compromise was facilitated by your intervention. I am glad it worked out, Claire said. The Council wishes to formalize humanity's role as mediators and consultants. We are offering Earth an upgraded status within the Council structure. Not full membership yet, but something beyond simple monitoring. You would have input on certain decisions, limited freedom to expand within your local stellar neighborhood, and access to more advanced educational and technological resources. Claire felt her heart race. In exchange for what? Continued cooperation when we need human perspective on difficult situations, and acceptance of enhanced monitoring to ensure you do not abuse the privileges you are granted. So more freedom but more surveillance. Velm's colors shifted in what might have been approval. You understand the nature of compromise, Director Watson. That is exactly why we value your input. Claire spent the next month working with world governments to negotiate the details. Some countries wanted to accept immediately. Others wanted to hold out for better terms. Eventually, they reached a consensus. Earth would accept the upgraded status on a trial basis. If it worked well, they could negotiate for full council membership in 100 years. If it did not work, they could revert to the original monitoring arrangement. Danny watched the announcement on television. The president stood before the camera and explained the new agreement. Humanity was taking another step forward. They were becoming real participants in galactic affairs instead of just subjects being watched and judged. It was not independence, it was not freedom, but it was progress. His sister called him that evening, her voice excited. Danny, did you see? They are opening applications for humans to study at council universities. Real universities on other planets. I'm applying. I have to try. Danny smiled. That is amazing. Go for it. After he hung up, Danny looked out his window at the Chicago skyline. The monitoring station was visible in the night sky, a bright spot among the stars. 8 months ago, that station had represented humanity's prison. Now it represented their gateway to something bigger. The world had not ended. Humanity had not been destroyed. Instead, they had found a way to survive by being useful, by offering something the ancient civilizations of the galaxy had forgotten they needed: fresh perspective. Honest feedback, the willingness to take risks when risks were called for and the wisdom to avoid them when they were not. Claire sat in her office late that night, reviewing the final documents. Kevin had sent her a message earlier. He was going back to teaching full-time. The crisis was over. The negotiations were complete. It was time to let other people handle the day-to-day work of human council relations. But Claire knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy had targeted Earth for elimination, and one transmission had changed everything. That first message to the Council had opened a door. Now it was up to humanity to prove they deserved to walk through it. The future was uncertain. The restrictions were still in place. The monitoring would continue, but Earth had a future. And that was more than they had 8 months ago. She turned off the lights and looked out at the city below. Millions of people going about their lives. Working, loving, hoping, dreaming. They had no idea how close they had come to not existing. But they were here. Humanity was here. And they were not going anywhere. The following year brought changes that nobody had anticipated. The upgraded status meant that human scientists could now access Council research databases. Engineers could study alien technology under supervision. Students could apply to attend educational institutions on other worlds. It was limited and controlled, but it was real opportunity. Danny's sister was accepted into a program on a Council world. She sent him messages every week, describing things that sounded impossible. Cities floating in the atmosphere of gas giants. Libraries containing millions of years of accumulated knowledge. Beings so different from humans that communication required specialized translation, devices that worked directly with the brain. Reading her messages made Danny feel both proud and envious. She was living the dream that every science fiction fan had imagined. Meanwhile, he was still in Chicago, still working a normal job, still living a normal life. But he was alive. That counted for something. Claire's work had become more complex as the relationship between Earth and the Council evolved. She coordinated educational exchanges. She helped resolve misunderstandings between human researchers and their alien counterparts. She mediated disputes when human companies tried to circumvent Council restrictions on certain technologies. One afternoon, Coordinator Veln appeared in her office again. This was becoming a regular occurrence. Claire had learned to read the being's color patterns. Today, the colors were swirling rapidly. That meant urgency. Director Watson, we have another situation that requires human input, but this one is different from the Kaldith crisis. This one is more delicate. Claire gestured to a chair. Tell me, there is a young species. They call themselves the Taurian. They have just achieved the technological level that would allow them to detect our presence in the galaxy. We must decide whether to make contact or to continue observing them from a distance. The Council is divided on this issue. What does this have to do with humans? Claire asked. You are the most recent species to make contact with the Council. You remember what it was like to suddenly learn you are not alone. The Council wants your perspective on how to approach the Taurian, whether to reveal ourselves now or wait. Claire thought about that terrible Tuesday morning when every screen on Earth had shown the same message. The panic, the fear, the feeling of being utterly powerless. What if the Council's first contact had been different? What if instead of a threat it had been an invitation? I will need to discuss this with my team, she said. This is not a decision I should make alone. Veln's colors settled into a steady blue. I expected nothing less. You have 1 week. The Council will make its decision then. Claire called an emergency meeting. Kevin, Amy, Ray, Frank, and Bate all gathered in Geneva within 48 hours. This time there were no protests. The public had accepted that these consultations were part of Earth's role in the galaxy now. The Council gave them access to everything they had learned about the Taurian. They were a species that looked like giant insects, living in underground colonies on a cold planet orbiting a red dwarf star. They had developed radio technology and were just beginning to send signals into space. In another generation or two, they would detect the Council's presence in nearby systems. The question was whether to wait for that natural discovery or to initiate contact now. Amy studied the biological data on the Taurian. They are social but territorial. Their entire civilization is built around colony cooperation, but they have fierce conflicts between different colonies. First contact could either unite them or cause massive internal conflict. Ray looked at their technology level. They are where humans were in the early 20th century. Radio, basic chemistry, just starting to understand nuclear physics. If the Council reveals itself now, it could completely reshape their development. Is that a bad thing? Bate asked. Maybe having guidance from the beginning would help them avoid the mistakes we made. Or maybe it would rob them of the experiences that made us who we are, Kevin countered. Humans learned by failing, by trying things, making mistakes, and figuring out better ways. If the council had contacted us in 1920, we might have developed completely differently. Frank was quiet for a long time, reading through the cultural data. Finally, he spoke. I think the real question is not when to make contact. It is how. The council contacted us with a death threat. That shaped everything that followed. If we are advising them on the Taurian, we need to make sure they do not repeat that mistake. Claire nodded. So we are not deciding whether the council should make contact. We are deciding how they should do it if they choose to. The team spent 3 days developing a proposal. They recommended that the council wait until the Taurian detected their presence naturally. But when that happened, the council should respond with an offer of knowledge and partnership instead of demands or threats. Let the Taurian maintain their autonomy while providing them with opportunities to learn and grow at their own pace. The proposal included specific protocols for how to approach the initial contact. Start with simple communication. Establish trust before revealing the full scope of the council's power. Offer help without demanding submission. Treat the Taurian as potential partners rather than subjects to be managed. When they presented the proposal to Coordinator Velm, the being's colors shifted through patterns that the translation system interpreted as thoughtful consideration. This approach is very different from how the Council typically handles first contact situations. We tend to establish our authority immediately to prevent misunderstandings about the power dynamic. How did that work out with us? Kevin asked pointedly. Did establishing your authority immediately create a smooth relationship? Velm's colors rippled. Point taken. Your species survived because you found a way to be valuable despite our initial threat. But what if you had not? What if you had simply given up or lashed out in futile resistance? Then you would have destroyed a species that could have helped you, Claire said, and you would have proven that the Council values control more than cooperation. Is that the legacy you want? The Council debated the human proposal for 2 weeks. Some members argued that the traditional approach had worked for millions of years and should not be changed. Others saw merit in treating younger species with more respect. The debate became heated, with factions forming and old alliances being tested. Finally, a compromise was reached. The Council would implement the human proposed protocol with the Taurian as an experiment. If it resulted in a stable and productive relationship, they would consider using similar approaches with other young species in the future. If it failed, they would revert to traditional methods. The Taurian detected the Council's presence 6 months later. Following the human protocol, the Council sent a simple message. Greetings. You are not alone. We are here to share knowledge if you wish to learn. The Taurian response was chaotic. Different colonies reacted in different ways. Some were terrified. Others were excited. A few tried to attack the Council's ships with their primitive weapons, but none of them united against the Council the way humans might have if given the same gentle approach. Over the following months, the Council established communication with the more receptive Taurian colonies. They offered educational resources and technological guidance, but they did not demand submission or impose restrictions. The relationship developed slowly but positively. Claire watched the progress reports with satisfaction. This was what humanity could offer the galaxy. Not just creative problem-solving, but empathy. The ability to remember what it was like to be young and afraid and facing something completely beyond understanding. 2 years after the initial crisis, Earth's position in the galactic community had stabilized. The restrictions were still in place, but they were being gradually relaxed. Humans could now travel freely within their local stellar neighborhood. Research collaborations with Council species were producing genuine breakthroughs, and most importantly, humanity had proven that they could be trusted with responsibility. Danny finally decided to apply for an off-world position, not because he felt he had to, but because he wanted to. His sister's messages had inspired him. If she could adapt to life among aliens, so could he. He was accepted into a program on a Council mining colony, helping to develop more efficient extraction methods that could work in extreme environments. The day before he left Earth, He stood on the roof of his apartment building and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there was the monitoring station, the council ships, the vast civilization that had almost ended humanity's story before it really began. But now those same stars represented opportunity instead of threat. His phone buzzed. A message from his sister: "Good luck tomorrow. You are going to love it out here, and do not worry, being afraid is normal. I was terrified my first month, but you adapt. That is what humans do best." Danny smiled. She was right. Humans adapted. That was the trait the council had feared most. The tendency to take whatever circumstances they found themselves in and figure out how to not just survive but thrive. And now that same trait was becoming humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy. Kevin had returned to teaching full-time, but his classes were different now. Instead of teaching purely theoretical concepts, he taught students about real interactions with alien civilizations. He shared the lessons he had learned, the importance of clear communication, the value of understanding different perspectives, the necessity of finding common ground even with beings that seemed completely foreign. His students hung on every word. Many of them were planning to work in the growing field of human-alien relations. They saw it as the future, and they were probably right. Amy's research had taken an unexpected turn. She was now studying how different species adapted to stress and environmental challenges. The council was interested in her findings because they applied not just to biology but to entire civilizations. How do you maintain stability while still allowing for growth? How do you manage change without losing your core identity? These were questions the council had struggled with for millions of years. Ray had been promoted to a senior position in the Space Force. He was helping design defense systems that could protect Earth within the council's guidelines. It was a delicate balance. The systems had to be effective enough to handle real threats, but not so powerful that the council would see them as a danger. He spent his days walking that line. Frank had become a consultant for multiple council engineering projects. His ability to see problems from unusual angles made him valuable for projects that had stalled using conventional approaches. He worked on everything from improving faster-than-light drive efficiency to designing better life support systems for mixed-species crews. Bate had taken a position training the next generation of strategists. She taught them how to think several moves ahead, how to anticipate consequences, how to find solutions that served multiple objectives at once. Her students would be the ones who helped navigate humanity's future relationship with the Council, and Claire continued to serve as the bridge between Earth and the Council. Her office had grown from a small team to a department with hundreds of employees. They handled everything from coordinating research projects to managing cultural exchanges to mediating disputes. It was exhausting work, but it mattered. On the anniversary of the day the first message had arrived, Claire organized a memorial service, not for those who had died, since humanity had survived intact, but for the innocence that had been lost, for the simple world where humans thought they were alone in the universe, for the comfortable ignorance that had let them imagine they were the masters of their own fate. The service was attended by thousands of people. World leaders gave speeches about resilience and cooperation. Religious figures talked about finding meaning in a universe far larger and stranger than anyone had imagined. Scientists discussed the incredible opportunities that lay ahead. But the moment that stuck with Claire was when an ordinary person stood up to speak. She was a teacher from a small town. She had no special position or authority. She simply wanted to say what she felt. "A year ago I was terrified. We all were. The world was ending and there was nothing we could do about it, but we did not end. We found a way forward, not the way we would have chosen, not the perfect way, but a way that let us keep living, keep learning, keep growing, and maybe that is enough. Maybe that is all we can ever ask for, the chance to keep going." The crowd applauded. Claire felt tears on her cheeks. The teacher was right. Humanity had been given the chance to keep going. Everything else, all the restrictions and monitoring and compromises, was just the price of admission. That night, Claire stood alone in her office. The city lights spread out below her. The monitoring station glowed above. She thought about the journey humanity had taken, from the edge of extinction to reluctant partnership to valued contributors. It had not been the story anyone expected, but it was their story now. The galaxy had targeted Earth for elimination. One transmission had changed everything. That transmission had opened a conversation that was still ongoing, a conversation about survival and cooperation, about balancing freedom with security, about what it meant to be part of something larger than yourself. Humanity was still learning how to navigate this new reality, but they were learning, adapting, growing, just like they always had, and maybe that was the real message. Not that humans were special or superior, but that they were survivors, and in a galaxy full of ancient civilizations that had forgotten how to take risks that made them valuable. Claire turned off the lights and headed home. Tomorrow there would be new challenges, new negotiations, new crises to manage, but tonight she could rest knowing that Earth had a future. It was not the future anyone had planned, but it was real, and it was theirs.